The vanishing of Roanoke. In the late 16th century, England was pushing hard to establish its foothold in the New World. In 1584, at Queen Elizabeth's command, Sir Walter Raleigh, her trusted advisor, dispatched a military expedition to North America under the command of Philip Amadas and Arthur Barlow. Searching for a suitable site to found a colony, they settled on the coastline of what is now North Carolina. After landing on the fertile shores near Cape Hatteras, they made their way to an island in the Albemarle Sound where the Roanoke River empties into the sea. Returning to England, the expedition leaders reported to Raleigh that they had found an excellent location. The green lands of Roanoke were fertile, and the local Powhatan tribes were friendly and well-disposed toward the English. Everything pointed to a promising future. The first proper colony could be sent. The report was optimistic enough that Raleigh moved quickly. In April 1585, he dispatched a large force of 600 men under Sir Richard Grenville. Full of hope, they crossed the Atlantic and established a settlement on the northern tip of Roanoke Island, Fort Raleigh. In August, Grenville returned to England, leaving the colony in the hands of a soldier named Ralph Lane, appointed governor in his absence. Lane's letters from this period painted an encouraging picture. The Powhatans had received the colonists with courtesy. Their chief, Pimisipan, had met with the governor on several occasions and had actively assisted in the colony's early construction. The Indians taught the English how to fish with nets, how to plant vegetables and grains, and how to grow tobacco. By all appearances, things were going well. But in June 1586, when Grenville returned to Roanoke with 3 ships loaded with supplies, he found Fort Raleigh completely empty. The colonists had left without taking anything. Personal belongings, weapons, food, all of it remained inside the fenced perimeter of the fort, surrounded by empty cabins. Grenville found no bodies, no blood, no written explanation of any kind. There were no signs of battle, and the Powhatans flatly denied any knowledge of what had happened. Mystified, Grenville left 15 men behind with a 2-year supply of food and powder and sailed back to England. What happened next defies easy explanation. In 1587, Raleigh sent another expedition, this time 150 people, including women and children. Why he chose to send civilians to a place where several hundred soldiers had vanished the year before is a question that has never been satisfactorily answered. The ships arrived in July 1587. The first thing the new colonists saw when they reached the fort were the skeletons of 2 of the 15 men Grenville had left behind. The other 13 had left no trace whatsoever. Despite this, the colonists chose to stay. The new governor was a man named John White, who threw himself into organizing the settlement. The fields were planted, horses were traded from the Indians, the cabins and the fort itself were reinforced. Relations with the Powhatans were gradually repaired. In August 1587, satisfied with the colony's progress, White sailed for England to resupply, and due to circumstances beyond his control, did not return for 2 years. He arrived in mid-August 1589 to find the fort completely empty again. As before, he found belongings abandoned in haste, empty but undamaged cabins, untouched stores of food in the granary. No bodies, no sign of violence. The diary of a colonist, a minister, broke off without warning mid-entry, with no indication of what had caused the people to leave or where they had gone. Later, Documents from a Spanish settlement further north in the Chesapeake Bay would indicate that Fort Raleigh was still operational in early autumn of 1588, less than a year before White's arrival. The colony had been functioning, and then, in some unrecorded interval, it had simply ceased to exist. The only clue White found was carved into the trunk of a single tree left standing near the fort. 3 letters, C-R-O. What they meant, no one has ever determined. When the English asked the Powhatans about the fires, the Indians told them the lights were made by the Awakule, evil dwarf spirits that steal people in the night. The beliefs of the tribes who inhabited Roanoke and the surrounding lands of North Carolina deserve attention. The Powhatans worshipped gods they described as human-shaped beings who had descended from the sky. They believed their gods had flying castles in the heavens that sometimes came down to earth to take the finest warriors and chiefs. They also spoke of evil sorcerers in the sky who could take a person, but whose interest in you meant something far worse. According to Powhatan oral tradition, entire villages had been emptied in a single night, with no one knowing where the people had gone. The Indians believed they had been carried upward. More than 100 colonists vanished from Roanoke. Their fate has never been established. The 3 carved letters, C-R-O, remain the only message they left behind. No one has ever explained what they mean. The Valley of the Headless. There is a place in Canada's Northwest Territories known for over a century as the Valley of the Headless. The name was not chosen for dramatic effect. It was earned. The valley in question is the Nahanni, a stretch of wilderness so remote and so consistently lethal to those who enter it that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police eventually stopped sending men in and started keeping records out. The Nahanni runs through deep gorges, past sulfur hot springs, past waterfalls taller than Niagara, through forests that swallow sound. The Dene people, who have lived near it for generations, called one section of it the Headless Range, and warned outsiders away. Nobody listened. The first recorded deaths came in 1898, when a party of 6 men went in looking for gold and never came out. 7 years later, the McLeod brothers, Willie and Frank, and their companion, Robert Weir, disappeared in the same area. 3 years after that, 9 decapitated corpses were found. They were identified by the rotted remains of their clothing and the talismans they had carried for good luck. The luck had not held. The deaths kept coming. In 1921, John O'Brien disappeared. A year later, Angus Hall. In the summer of 1932, the headless body of Phil Powers was found at his burned-out cabin. In 1936, William Epler and Joseph Mulholland vanished. In 1940, a hunter named Holmberg disappeared, followed by Savard in 1945, and a police officer named Shabak in 1949. In 1962, search teams spent more than 2 months looking by helicopter for a man named Blake Mackenzie. The following year brought 2 more disappearances, Orville Webb and Thomas Papp, after which journalists began to take serious notice. In 1965, a team of 2 Swedes and a German went in to investigate the mystery and joined the list of the missing. The search party sent after them numbered 6. 2 of them also vanished. In 1980, a German magazine hired 3 former U.S. military veterans, men with wilderness survival experience, and sent them into the Nahanni on a month-long contract. The month passed. None of them returned. It was against this background that, in the summer of 1978, a serious attempt was made to find a rational explanation. A team of 6 researchers was assembled, led by Dr. Hank Mortimer, a well-known American investigator of anomalous phenomena. The expedition was properly equipped. Advanced communication gear, supplies for an extended stay, constant radio contact with a base camp established near the valley's edge. On the evening of the first day in the field, the base camp operator heard screaming. Then, the voice of the team's radio operator, Ray Wilson. "Something is coming out of the rock. It's an emptiness. It's..." Those were the last words received from the expedition. A helicopter with armed personnel was airborne within minutes. 30 minutes after that, it landed at the coordinates Wilson had given for the campsite. There was no tent. There were no researchers. There were no tracks, no equipment, no sign that anyone had been there at all. 5 days later, search teams found a skeleton. It was identified as Robert Weir, one of the McLeod party's companion, missing since 1905. 73 years. The skeleton was headless. The case attracted enough attention that, some years later, an international scientific expedition was mounted, arguably the best equipped attempt ever made to determine what was happening in the Nahanni. The researchers traveled in armored vehicles built to a custom design, carrying video equipment capable of recording in any conditions. For the first 2 days, the valley appeared lifeless. On the 3rd day, a fog moved in, thick enough to reduce visibility to arm's length. The team filed a detailed radio report on the deteriorating conditions. The radio went silent mid-transmission. When the fog cleared, military units swept every meter of the valley. The armored vehicles were gone. The researchers were gone. There was nothing. The Nahanni Valley sits in Canada's Northwest Territories, a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1978. Tourists visit the river by canoe every summer. The disappearances have never been explained. The headless bodies have never been accounted for. The question of who, or what, removes the heads, and why, and where they go, remains entirely open. To date, no answer has been found. Lullaby for Eugene. The snow came in the night. It covered the garden in white and now watched from behind low gray clouds to see how Eugene would react. Once, he would have been pleased, but he stood at the window and tried not to cry. Exactly 1 year ago, his mother had died. The first snow had fallen that day too. It fell during the funeral and kept falling long after. And now, here it was again. Same day, same snow. Pretending to be clean and brilliantly beautiful. What a sly thing. Eugene knew the snow's treacherous nature. White on the surface, dirty water underneath. Frau Kugel's footsteps came down the hall like a trained elephant's. Eugene had seen a real elephant once, when the whole family had gone to the circus in Berlin. That had been a good time. A happy time. His governess fully lived up to her name, round and heavy-set. When Eugene was small, he had naively believed that all fat people were good-natured, like fresh rolls. But Frau Kugel was more like raw dough. Her face was dense and barely moved, as if sculpted. When she spoke, every word dropped to the floor with a thud. Eugene was half afraid to stand next to her in case a phrase fell on his foot. Eugene, after breakfast we will go to the park. Your father says you need fresh air. After that, lessons. Yes, Frau, of course. Good, go eat. His mood sank further. The treacherous snow would absolutely find its way down the back of his collar, or hide a stone for him to trip on. Afterward, it would laugh its prickling little snowflake laugh. The oatmeal at breakfast did nothing to improve things. They took the tram. Frau Kugel sat in silence and stared ahead. Outside, A snow-covered city. Even the old town hall wearing a fur hat. Eugene hunched his shoulders and buried his hands in his pockets. The conductor in his peaked cap rubbed his gray mustache and watched the two passengers, the only ones in the car. They walked down a snow-covered avenue and entered the park. Something twisted in Eugene's chest. He used to come here with his mother. One bright summer afternoon surfaced in his memory. She had been sitting on a bench, laughing loudly. He couldn't remember what had made her laugh, but he remembered the dimples in her cheeks, the blue dress with the full skirt, the hat. Now the treacherous snow sat on that bench. It had taken the whole thing for itself and was watching Eugene with sharp little eyes. "Go on then," it said. "Cry, little one. Go ahead." The park was empty. Even in summer, few people came here. The children were all at the skating rink or the sledding hill. Why would anyone want this old, quiet square? Frau Kugel hadn't come without a purpose. She led him with purpose around the leaning wooden gazebo and pointed at something in the snow nearby. A few steps away, a round hole filled with black water. Like an ice fishing hole, but this was no river. There was no river anywhere near here. "What is that, Frau Kugel?" "Go closer and listen," the governess said, indifferently, and nudged Eugene toward it. He walked to the edge, grimacing at the wet snow underfoot. The water was wrong. Black as ink, and smelling of licorice and something else he couldn't name. "Listen," said Frau Kugel. And then Eugene understood what she meant. From inside the dark water, a lullaby was playing, soft and tender. His mother used to sing it. And that was his mother's voice, rising from somewhere below the surface through the weight of the black water. He opened his eyes with the melody still in his head, tangled in the sheets, kicking free of the heavy quilt. The room was bright. On the windowsill sat the treacherous snow, peering in and glittering smugly in the morning sun, while Eugene's cheeks were still wet. At breakfast, he pushed his spoon through the oatmeal. "I want to take you to the park today," said Frau Kugel. She folded her large hands on the table. She appeared to be looking straight ahead, but Eugene caught her watchful, faintly amused expression. Weren't we just there? Yesterday? What are you talking about? We haven't been to the park in weeks. Your father says you need fresh air." "Then I must have dreamed it. I'd like to speak to Father." "He's busy, Eugene. He asked not to be disturbed." As they left the house, Eugene glanced up at the second floor. His father was at the window of his study, watching from behind the curtain. The tram again. The conductor with the mustache again. But this time there was snow inside the tram car. How had it gotten through the roof? Frau Kugel swept it off the seat with her hand before sitting. The park was empty. The trees held up their white branch fingers. A muffled silence lay over everything like a prickling blanket. Snowflakes turned slowly in the air, sparse and unhurried. Frau Kugel led him behind the gazebo again. But this time, standing beside the black hole, there was a figure. A girl in a black coat and a bright red scarf. "Go and play with her. Just don't fall in," said Frau Kugel, and Eugene caught the unpleasant smile that crossed her lips. "Hello," Eugene said. The girl turned her head, looked at him for a moment, then answered, "Hello." She was a little older than Eugene and nearly a head taller. Her eyes were gray, the same color as the sky above them. "What's your name?" he asked. "Helga." She pulled the red scarf up over her nose. "Do you want to play, Helga?" "Yes." They built a snowman. For a while, Eugene forgot about the treacherous snow and the black hole both, until he heard the lullaby again. "Do you hear that song?" Helga wiped her nose on her sleeve and looked at him with mild surprise. "What song?" "The lullaby," he said. No, why would I? At the orphanage, Frau Gaser sings to us sometimes, but that's a different one. You live in an orphanage? Yes. Helga packed a snowball and threw it at a tree. St. Bartholomew's on Friedrich Street. What lullaby is it? She usually sings us, Children Come to Me, but that's more of a Christmas carol. I don't know the name. Eugene shifted uncomfortably and glanced at the hole. I don't remember the words. I was too small. Then listen now, said Helga. He listened. His mother was singing from beneath the water. She said she was cold and alone. She said she was hungry. Very hungry. Eugene took a step toward the black water, then another. The song came in clearly now, pleading, pulling. He leaned over the edge and saw his mother's pale face beneath the surface. Her eyes were closed. Her lips were dry and cracked, just as they had been on that day when he had slipped past his father in the doorway and seen her, yellow-gray and still, drowned in white bedsheets. And behind him, Frau Kugel, stretching a smile, winking at him as if sharing a secret. She was just as treacherous as the snow, or perhaps she was the snow. Eugene woke up again. The snow outside the window was laughing. It had gathered all his toys, and they sat in a ring around him, staring with their button eyes. The heavy footsteps came down the hall. Good morning, Eugene. Time to get up. Breakfast is ready. Frau Kugel, will we go to the park today? We will. Your father says you need fresh air. I want to play with that girl again. Helga. Eat your porridge, Eugene. Everything else, later. Can I bring my sled? You may. Eat. The tram, a bright red stain against the white. Inside, snowdrifts, and Eugene sank to his knees getting to his seat. The other benches were occupied by snowmen with attentive coal eyes. But Eugene was not afraid. They would play with Helga, and his mother would sing. She would sing and tell them what to do. In the park, Eugene pulled free of Frau Kugel's hand and ran ahead down the avenue. The old leaning gazebo looked, this time, like a witch's cottage. Not a gingerbread house, more like a heap of sugar. And the evil witch was inside, waiting to grab him with her sticky fingers. There was the hole, and beside it, Helga, waving her mitten. They built a snow wall and a slide. Sit on the sled. I'll push you, said Eugene and Helga as he sent her down the slope. Again! Again! She cried. She had time to be frightened when Eugene began steering her toward the hole, but not time enough to do anything. Only a scream before the black water swallowed her. Then silence. Instant, total silence. Only Frau Kugel's heavy footsteps coming up behind him. Is this a dream? Asked Eugene. The governess nodded. Then I'll wake up? This isn't your dream, Eugene. Whose is it? Hers. Frau Kugel pointed at the hole. That's not my mother. That's the witch from the gingerbread house. Only witches eat children. Eugene was shaking, his voice tight. The breadcrumb trail was eaten by the birds. A tear ran down his cheek and fell as a chip of ice. The governess breathed heavily. What does it matter? She loves you, and if you are a good boy, you won't even notice the difference. Eugene turned his head and saw that Frau Kugel was made of dough. Someone had shaped her and pressed glass marbles from the box under his bed into her face for eyes. He woke up again. The bedroom was filled with the wonderful smell of waffles, warm and homey, and the last of the bad dream was dissolving into a thin, almost imperceptible unease. Eugene padded barefoot to the landing and listened. Someone was moving in the kitchen below and humming. That voice. Mama. He ran down the stairs and through the kitchen door. It was her, in the blue dress, the soft, knowing smile. You're up, my darling. How lovely. Eugene threw himself into her arms, face buried in her apron, breathing in the familiar warmth of her. "Come now, sit down and eat, my dear." Frau Kugel appeared in the doorway. "Shall I set the dining room, ma'am?" "Of course, Frau. You're welcome to join us, if you like." The governess shook her head, and Eugene thought that Frau Kugel certainly didn't like waffles. How wonderful! Even the snow outside didn't seem so treacherous. His mother was back. The illness, the funeral, those had been the bad dream. These waffles were perfect, with cherry syrup and cold milk. Only his mother wasn't eating. She sat beside her empty plate. "After breakfast, we'll go to the park," she said. "Why the park?" Eugene set down his half-eaten waffle. "I'm hungry, Eugene. You have to feed me again." She smiled gently and reached over to smooth his hair. "I've found another little orphan. Don't worry, they don't feel it. They simply stop waking up. No one will miss them. They have no parents, but you have me." Her thin spider fingers closed around Eugene's wrist. "Frau Kugel will help you get dressed, sweetheart. Hurry, we'll miss the tram. The conductor doesn't like to wait." Outside, the evil and treacherous snow was falling. It spun in its closed little world, like inside a snow globe, giving no way out from the bad dream. No chance to open your eyes wide and find yourself somewhere else.